Oh, are you serious? Are you serious? We got information now about the attack on the Libyan United States consulate. Get some coffee and just, oh, are you serious? Okay. Stephen of Oklahoma. Way to go, Stephen. Way to go. I was having a wonderful day. All right. Officials at the White House and the State Department were advised 2 hours after the attackers assaulted the United States diplomatic mission in Benghazi, Libya, on September the 11th, 2012, that an Islamic militant group had claimed credit for the attack, according to officials in emails that were translated. The emails were obtained by Reuters from government sources not connected with the U.S. spy agencies or the State Department, and who requested anonymity, specifically mentioned that the Libyan group called Ansar al-Sharia had asserted responsibility for the attacks. The brief emails also show how U.S. diplomats described the attack. Even as it was still underway, their emails were getting to Washington. They were still alive. And not only that, we already know from the Pentagon that the video cameras around the consulate filmed the attackers, 20 armed men with AK-47s and assault rifles. This was not an angry mob. This was not an angry mob. This was a well thought out, well devised plan to attack the United States consulate on the anniversary, the 11th anniversary of 9/11. Folks, let's be honest. Why did the White House then immediately break out the news, send it to Anderson Cooper and Wolf Blitzer of CNN, and let them go ahead and run out there with it, saying that it was an angry mob of protesters upset about a Muslim video on YouTube? What? Don't blame YouTube. Don't blame freedom of speech. Don't blame me, you, anyone else that's participating in alternative media for telling the truth. It was I hate to say it, guys, it's looking like a bold-faced lie coming right out of the White House, right out of the Obama administration, right out of the White House. I mean, somebody devised this response. May have not been the president, may have been those underlings that are under him, those political advisors that run around like David Axelrod with their ring in their hands. But the reason I'm saying this, you say, oh, here we go, this is just political. No! 4 dead Americans. One was United Nations ambassador. We had not had a United Nations ambassador killed since 1979 in this country. And everybody's just blown it off. And I see the president's going to be on Jay Leno tonight. And we went on The View. And he's been on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. He's been hanging out with David Letterman. You know what? I mean, seriously, this thing is ugly with a capital U. And it doesn't get to go away. And maybe that's what Donald Trump's going to talk about. I don't. U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens and 3 other Americans were killed in Benghazi's assault, which President Barack Obama and U.S. officials ultimately acknowledged was a terrorist attack carried out by militants, was suspected eventually, ultimately, but not for 2 weeks they didn't. Not for 2 weeks, okay? It was how many newscasts, how many officials from the government talked about the little video on YouTube. Now we all know that had nothing to do with it. But I tell you what the YouTube video did. Nobody even cared about the YouTube video. Nobody even cared about it. It's so poorly done. But what happened was when the White House said this was the reason the consulate burnt down, immediately the Egyptians were starting to burn down and pull down the flags and riot at the U.S. embassies. And then it happened in 25 Middle Eastern nations that weekend and half of Europe. And that none of that would have happened if they would have just come out and said, look, we've had an attack. We've been attacked by terrorists, Muslim militants, jihadists. Don't blame us. Basically, this was blaming the freedom of speech. Don't blame freedom of speech for the problems in a failed foreign policy. Really, that's the way it should be explained, although I'll probably be the only one that will. So anyway, folks, this is some of the stuff going on. It's frustrating because we got people that are dead. And behind me, I'm showing you some clips of some apocalyptic moments that are going to come up on the earth. These are not just going to be rare volcanic explosions occasionally. This is going to be the norm. When the fire and the brimstone begins to fall from the sky and the earth and the poles shifts this earth upside down, as it says in Isaiah 24. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. I just thought I'd give you some of the apocalyptic view of what's going to come upon the earth. And while we're talking about the foreign policies of the United States current administration, let's go ahead and talk about Bin-Laden. During the debate with Mitt Romney, President Barack Obama made this statement. In some of his most blunt remarks to date, he said on Monday that Osama bin Laden would have escaped if the United States had sought Pakistan's permission ahead of the raid on Al-Qaeda's leader's compound. That's very disturbing to me. I believe he's telling the truth, though. I actually think the president's telling the truth. Had he asked for permission from the Pakistanis to get Osama bin Laden, they'd have said no. Or they would have tipped him off. He'd have got away. I mean, that I believe. The problem I have with this is Pakistan has 100 nuclear weapons. Pakistan's supposed to be an ally of America. We give Pakistan how many billions of dollars a year? Why? We can't even trust them. Hunting down the most wanted man in the world from the greatest terrorist attack in history. If you can't trust them, why are you giving them billions of our tax dollars? That's another question. I mean, that's just another simple question. But Leon, look at this. The Obama administration officials have previously justified the decision not to involve Islamabad by citing the risk that bin Laden might somehow be tipped off and flee his compound. Before Team Navy SEAL Team 6 arrived. Leon Panetta, who is the defense secretary, at that time was the director of the CIA, and now the defense secretary, said in an interview with Time magazine shortly after May 2011 raid that there was a concern that the Pakistanis might alert the targets. That's a problem. If you don't have any more trust in that, then you need to stop. Don't give them another dime. Don't give them another dime. You say, well, if we don't give them any money, they'll start getting worse. That's called the doctrine of appeasement. Jimmy Carter was the king of it. Barack Obama is the prince of it. It's the doctrine of appeasement, and it doesn't work. Period. Ask yourself a question. Are we more stronger now, 4 years later, with our foreign policy than we were? I'm not agreeing with the Bush doctrine, which seemed to be almost imperialistic, where, going around and occupying Afghanistan to this day. I don't know what that was about. I understand we're trying to get Osama bin Laden, but he was in Pakistan for 7 years. But what was the Iraq thing about? It just felt like settling old scores. And we don't need that type of leadership from George W. Bush. Barack Obama has been a more passive. Although he got Osama bin Laden, his overall foreign policy has been one of push Israel aside and embrace your enemies. Hold your friends close, but your enemies closer, is what it seems like. Instead of hold your enemies close and your friends closer, it seems as he's playing that doctrine. Well, we need to pray for our country. We don't know who's going to lead the free world the next 4 years. It probably doesn't matter. What does matter is that the Lord Jesus Christ, that we as Christians call upon the name of the Lord and try our best to get people saved in this last days. Send me a personal message. I want to be saved. I want to be saved. I want to be saved.